Max Verstappen just revealed the brutal childhood secret behind his impossible grip, and it explains why he is about to destroy the entire field in 2026. While other drivers panic about the new low-downforce regulations, Max has been training for this exact scenario since he was 4 years old. We must look at what is happening in the paddock this week to understand the significance of this news. It is January 14th, 2026, and the first real data from the 2026 cars is terrifying the grid. The new regulations have stripped away 30% of the downforce and pumped the engines full of instant electrical torque. The result is a car that wants to slide in every single corner. Engineers describe it as driving on ice, and top contenders like Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc are already reporting that the cars feel dangerously unstable. While everyone else scrambles to find grip, Max Verstappen is reportedly smiling. Because 20 years ago, his father Jos didn't simply teach him to drive, he rigged the game against him. The viral clip circulating today shows Max admitting that his superhuman car control isn't natural talent. It was manufactured in freezing cold silence, on a karting track in Genk, where he was forced to drive with a handicap that nobody else knew about. The story blowing up social media today confirms a long-standing rumor about the Verstappen training regime. We now know that Jos Verstappen pushed Max hard by actively sabotaging his equipment to force him to find grip where none existed. Jos admitted to secretly bolting lead weights onto the frame of Max's kart before practice sessions. He wouldn't tell Max, simply sending him out and demanding he match the lap times of the older kids on lighter machines. When Max complained that the kart felt heavy or lazy, Jos would tell him to stay quiet and drive harder. It was gaslighting, but it forced Max to develop a sensitivity to weight transfer that no other driver possesses. He learned to manipulate a sluggish rear end by being more aggressive with his steering inputs, creating the exact pointy driving style that makes his Red Bull setup undrivable for teammates like Sergio Perez. The weights were only half the torture, as the other half explains his dominance in the rain. Jos would drag Max to the track in the dead of winter, when the asphalt was freezing and grip was non-existent. There is a verified story that on Wednesdays, after school ended at noon, they would head to the track in sub-zero conditions. Jos would let the van engine run, so Max could warm his hands between stints, but the moment his fingers thawed, he was sent back out. Max recalls driving until he literally couldn't feel the steering wheel, and his fingers froze into a claw shape. Most parents would stop, but Jos didn't care. He told Max that if he could set a fast lap when he couldn't even feel his hands, driving in the rain with tire warmers would feel like a vacation. This created a driver who doesn't rely on physical feedback alone, but anticipates what the car will do before it actually happens. If you find this insight into the Verstappen psyche fascinating, hit subscribe and the notification bell as we cover the hidden stories behind F1's biggest moments every single week. We will now examine the data that proves this training worked. You can actually see the result of this brutal upbringing in the telemetry traces we have from last season. When a normal driver feels the rear tire slide, there is a delay of about 0.2 seconds before they apply countersteer, which is the standard human reaction time. However, looking at Max's trace shows the countersteer often begins before the slide registers on the sensors. It is almost spooky because he isn't reacting to the slide, but rather initiating it. He uses a sharp, aggressive turn-in to deliberately break the traction of the rear tires and rotate the car instantly so he can stomp on the gas earlier. To a driver like Alex Albon or Pierre Gasly, this feels like the car is trying to kill them. They describe the Red Bull as unstable and loose. However, to Max, who spent his childhood wrestling a weighted kart on ice, a loose rear end isn't a problem. It is the only way he knows how to drive. We saw the ultimate payoff of this technique at the Brazilian Grand Prix in late 2024. This race is still being studied by driver coaches as the perfect wet weather masterclass. Starting from P17 on the grid, Max humiliated the field by finishing 19 seconds ahead of second place, while setting 17 fastest laps in a row. Watch the onboard footage closely. Lando Norris and George Russell were trying to drive normal racing lines by sweeping wide and carrying speed, whereas Max was driving square lines. He would brake late, turn the car violently to point the nose at the exit, and then drive straight out of the corner. He wasn't using the rubbered-in racing line, which becomes slippery when wet. He was finding grip on the extreme inside and outside of the track, crossing over the rubber in a way that looked physically impossible. That wasn't luck. It was the frozen hands training, kicking in when it mattered most. This context explains the current panic over the 2026 regulations. The FIA has mandated cars that have significantly less aerodynamic grip and engines that produce massive torque from the electric motor. The 2026 cars will behave exactly like that weighted kart Max drove as a kid. They will be heavy, they will slide, and they will punish anyone who relies on smooth aerodynamic grip to go fast. We are already hearing rumors from the simulators that smooth drivers, like Jenson Button or Carlos Sainz, who rely on precision, are struggling to keep the new cars on track. The rear tires simply give up too easily. This high-torque, low-grip formula is exactly what the Verstappen camp has been preparing for. The hack is not a car part, but a neural pathway built over 20 years of driving difficult machines. The panic in the paddock is real. Reports from Maranello and Woking suggest that Ferrari and McLaren are frantically trying to dial in stability to their 2026 concepts because their drivers can't handle the torque snap. Charles Leclerc is incredible over one lap, but he prefers a predictable car. Lando Norris has admitted he hates it when the car feels snappy. They are trying to engineer the slide out of the car. Max prefers the opposite approach and actively wants the slide. He wants the front end to bite so hard that the rear naturally swings out, allowing him to steer with the throttle. While other teams lose weeks of development time trying to make their cars easier to drive, Red Bull can build the fastest, nastiest car possible, knowing their driver is the only human on Earth who can tame it. Experts call this the return of the human traction control era. For the last decade, F1 has been dominated by aerodynamics, where winning depended on having the best wind tunnel data. However, 2026 shifts the balance back to the driver's hands and feet. With active aerodynamics changing the wing angles mid-lap and the battery delivering sudden bursts of power, the car's balance will shift constantly from corner to corner. You cannot program a setup for that, so you have to feel it. Max's ability to drive a weighted car means he is less sensitive to these balance shifts. If the active aero stalls, or the battery kicks in too hard, he naturally corrects it without thinking. This turns the 2026 regulations from a reset button into a launch pad for another era of dominance. We are witnessing the difference between a driver who learned to race and a driver who was built to win. The 2026 season was supposed to level the playing field, but if the cars really are as difficult to drive as the data suggests, it might actually widen the gap. We often talk about car advantage in Formula One, but we rarely talk about adaptation advantage. While the rest of the grid spends the first 10 races of 2026 relearning how to control a sliding car, Max Verstappen will effectively be returning to his childhood playground. The mysterious hack isn't something you can copy with a setup sheet or buy with a budget cap. It is the scar tissue from thousands of laps on a frozen track in Genk, and it is about to make the rest of the grid look like amateurs. History suggests that whenever the rules make the cars harder to drive, the best driver wins by a mile. That is the reality of 2026. Thanks for watching this breakdown, and if you want to stay ahead of the grid this season, make sure to hit subscribe right now.